What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Agents of Fandom podcast. I am your temporary co-host for today, Adam Blevins, senior editor here at Agents of Fandom. Your usual host, TJ Zwarich, will not be joining us today. He's up from me. I don't know if Calgary is up or down from him, where that is on the map relative to Canada. But he is up for me at the Calgary Expo, having a good time, meeting lots of exciting new people, getting some interviews in, doing all kinds of fun stuff. But he will be back joining us next week. But that's not an issue at all because I've got two of my favorite people to talk about just with anything in the world here with me today. Joining me, my first co-host, has joined me a few weeks ago as well, and actually kind of took the co-hosting reins from me and did just an awesome job with so much podcasting experience. TJ Pastilli, the Fat Thor. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Good. What an intro, man. Thank you so much. That was awesome. It's always such a great time hanging out with my dudes, talking X-Men, talking nerdy stuff. So, man, I could not be more excited to be here and talking with you guys today. And it's going to be such a fun time, man. I can't wait.
Agree. We have got a lot of fun stuff to talk about, and helping us out with that, also another fellow agent. It's so nice to have you guys, both of you, back when we were just talking a few days ago for Deadpool. So make sure everybody, if you haven't listened to the Deadpool episode, that was, at least for me personally, some of the most fun I've had talking about anything all year. So if you're listening to this and you haven't listened to that, what are you doing? Go listen to that right now.
Go.
Joining
right now,
us,
run.
who was also on that episode, working over at the Direct, and then also recently joined the Agents of Fandom team officially as an agent himself. Rich, how you doing, buddy?
Doing great. It's great to be back. Like you said, Adam, talking Deadpool and Wolverine. I will talk Deadpool any day of the week with anybody, and I love talking about it with you guys. We had so much fun on that episode. It's an hour and like 20 minutes of just us nerding like crazy over Deadpool and Wolverine. That's the movie I can't wait for this year, like more than anything. But I'm so happy to be here. Second time as an official agent, which is awesome. Got some X-Men, got some Bad Batch, and like you said, TJ, I love to nerd out about anything and everything on any podcast, on any just chat I can get myself onto. So let's go.
I'm 100% with y'all. And even with the Deadpool episode, it was funny for me because I remember looking up and seeing that we had been talking for like an hour and 15 minutes. And I was like, you could have told me at that point that it had only been 30 minutes and I would have believed you, because it was just so much fun talking about that. But today we are going to talk about a little bit of the Bad Batch episode, season 3, episode 14, and then X-Men 97. I'm going to pass the torch to TJ and Rich to talk about X-Men 97 episode. That's 7, right? That we're on this week, episode 7, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Because I am going to be splitting out a little early to go see the Challengers, which keep your eye out to agentsofandom.com. My review for that will be up sometime in the next day or two, probably. But let's go ahead and get right into it. I kind of want to, I've got the recap that I wrote for Agents of Fandom up on the site right now. I'm going to kind of go through the first portion of the episode a little bit, beat by beat, and then we'll pause a little bit halfway in. And I want to kind of get you guys' thoughts on everything. So the Bad Batch season 3, episode 14 opens with the crew plotting their infiltration on Tantus, where they decide to go in on foot. Inside the base, a trooper warns Dr. Hemlock that Clone Force 99 has arrived. After this is like something that's been going on for this entire season. They've been looking for Tantus the whole season, pretty much since Omega got back and got back to them. Omega and Crosshair got out and got back to them. They've known they were going to have to go back, and now they're finally here. So they finally get to the planet, and then as soon as they're there, Dr. Hemlock, he dispatches fighters on them, and they sick the laser cannons and everything, and they don't last long, to be quite frank. They arriving on this little shuttle, they pretty much stood no chance. So then we kind of go back down into the vault, and we see everything going on in the base. They've got this huge security warning. They know that everybody's this supposedly unfindable, unbreachable base has been found by somebody, and now we may see it breached by somebody as well. And the team kind of takes out a few people, and they get out of the ship, and then Dr. Hemlock orders some people to get out and search for them. So we're about we're like 10, 15 minutes, or probably about 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes into the episode at this point. How did this excuse me. I got a dog, always.
They liked it.
Sorry about that. When I'm not hosting, it's funny. I can just
feeling.
mute my mic and scream at her. But now that I'm doing the talking, I'm like, there's no
You're
other
on
way
the
around
spot,
it.
man.
Right.
Hey, pets are always good.
So I'm glad too. I paused because it made me think. I believe this is the first time that either of you we brought you guys on to talk about the Bad Batch in particular, if I'm not mistaken. So I would
Yeah.
love to, just before we get into, I say this after already going beat by beat for the first part of the episode, but before we get into the specifics after I've gone over, I'd love to kind of hear from each of you real quick, starting with you, Rich, about what your relationship is like with the Bad Batch, and then where you stand on this season overall.
I love the Bad Batch. I started watching obviously when it first came out. It's really funny with me too. I've said this before in a couple other shows that it took me a while to get into like the animated side of Star Wars. I've actually like over the last couple of years, I've caught up on basically every TV and movie media version of Star Wars, which it's great finally being all caught up. Which included the Bad Batch, included Clone Wars. I mean, Clone Wars is to me still some of the best Star Wars content out there, especially like season 6 and season 7, just top tier stuff. And then the Bad Batch is like just about living up to that kind of hype. It's really, really good. I love the team. I mean, D. Bradley Baker as 5 different people, sometimes more, is just an it's a showcase in voice acting. I can't give him enough credit for the work he does with this entire team. The Bad Batch has been great. I love the first 2 seasons. Just recently, because I've been so busy with work and just trying to catch up on so much stuff, as you guys know, just got up on season 3 a few days ago. I saw the screeners when they first came out. I think it was the first 8 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. But it's been a great season so far. And this episode in particular, with some of the stuff with Omega and Hemlock, I got to shout out to one of the other voice actors in this one, Jimmy Simpson as Dr. Hemlock. Fantastic actor. I love him in everything I've ever seen him in, and he's doing a great job in this. But there's some drama and some excitement in, especially the last couple episodes, including this week, that we're really going to get into. It's been a good time.
I 100% agree with you, especially about D. Bradley Baker and then the Clone Wars comparisons. I think if you kind of put somebody that has never watched Star Wars or anything like that and just kind of drop them into the show, they would never in a million years guess that every member of Clone Force 99, and then like a lot of other side characters in the show too, are all voiced by D. Bradley Baker, because he's doing amazing work. And then I agree too that the first couple of seasons, like I really liked season 1, and then season 2, it dipped a little bit for me because I think they lost some of that same focus and that same maturity, especially as a theme that we've been talking about throughout this show, as we've been talking about the Bad Batch, that this season has felt so mature. Like, yes, this is an animated show, and a lot of people are like, animated shows are for kids, but this to me, there's some themes here that I don't think anybody, like children, would understand. That are
just wait till we get to X-Men 97. We'll talk about a kids show, right?
That is most definitely not a kids show. That is the perfect case. That's a great example. But I agree that the highs that we've reached this season, really throughout. There's been a few dips for me, but like even then, only 2 or 3. But those highs are definitely on that same Clone Wars. And then for me, like Rebels level, I think we're kind of right up there in that same echelon. TJ, what about you? What's your relationship like with the Bad Batch, but also just kind of Star Wars in general? Like where did your Star Wars fandom start, and kind of how did you get to here?
Oh man, I love Star Wars. I'm big into Star Wars. That's like probably one of the first movies I can even remember watching was like Empire Strikes Back. I mean, it's my jam, man. But I will say I am kind of like Rich, where the movies was kind of my main sauce, if you would. And I watched Clone Wars like when I was a kid, as it was like coming out a little bit, but I didn't really keep up with it. And it wasn't until season 7 of Clone Wars that I was like, okay, I got to go back and watch all of this, because this is like Rich is saying, some of the best Star Wars content I've ever seen. So I devoured Clone Wars. I did a little bit of Rebels when Ahsoka was coming out, because I was covering that. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I love Star Wars, but my main focus, at least for the last couple of years, has been like more of the world of Star Wars as opposed to like anything in particular. So like with Ahsoka, it's a lot of like, the Jedi lore and like the timeline of where things are placed. So unfortunately, I've been very behind on my Star Wars content, specifically on the Bad Batch. So I've caught a couple episodes like the first season when it first dropped. And I actually watched this recent episode because I knew we were going to be talking about it. But yeah, so unfortunately, I'm not too up to date on it. But man, I just love Star Wars. Anything that gives me more in this world, especially too, while, like I just said, I focus more on like the Jedi stuff. I have always said that that's one of my criticisms of Star Wars, is that we're too focused on the Jedi. And I've always been saying I want more projects like Mandalorian, like Andor and Bad Batch, that explore like what other people are doing in this fight. So I love it just for that basis alone, even though I haven't seen everything about it. And I just got to say before I quit my rambling is just Dave Filoni can do no wrong. Him at the if he's behind it, I am 100% on board for sure.
Yeah, two things real quick before you go, Adam. Dave Filoni to me is on that Jon Favreau, Kevin Feige level where I trust literally anything that comes from him because his Star Wars stuff has been so good. And on your point about like the non-Jedi stuff in Star Wars, I was just thinking this while you were talking. I think The Mandalorian might have been one of the best things to ever happen to Star Wars, not just because it's a fantastic show in and of itself, but the fact that we finally got to some of that outer world stuff, like if you want to call it like the outer rim of Star Wars, like as a franchise in itself. And we just kind of went like on a crazy wild ride from there, exploring the Mandoverse, and especially it was great timing too, because like Rise of Skywalker, I think had either just come out or like wasn't quite out yet, and Rise of Skywalker did not do Star Wars any favors. At least for me, if I'm being really honest.
Yeah.
But I mean, but thank God for Mando and the shows that come after it. I mean, Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka. Ahsoka has some of my favorite Star Wars content ever. I mean, episode 5 might be my single favorite piece of Star Wars content.
Slapping, dude. Slapping.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, thank God for the Disney Plus Star Wars side.
Yeah, I think it really opened people's eyes to like these stories can be interesting without Jedi. Like you're kind of more general people that are like, oh, no laser swords. I don't want this, right?
Totally.
Andor, especially, I remember watching Andor week to week and being so blown away with like just the quality of that show, but also being afraid, like, oh man, please just don't deviate from what you're doing that's working so well and give me some Jedi episode or try to throw something else in the mix this because we clearly don't need it. They had their own thing working very well with that show. And you guys did a great job too, shouting out Dave Filoni, but I also want to shout out Brad Rao and Jennifer Corbett, who are essentially the Dave Filoni of this show. You know, Filoni is the creator of the Bad Batch and this kind of stuff, but Jennifer Corbett is the writer on every single episode, and then Brad Rao is the director of the lion's share of episodes. I think he's directed close to 50 of the episodes so far, by far more than anybody else. So, like, obviously Filoni deserves his credit too, but the two of them are for at least for this particular, like I know the Filoni verse, the Mando verse, and then all the animated projects are all in a vein kind of Dave Filoni's baby. They all belong to him on a certain level, but on a day-to-day kind of managing just this story, I think Brad Rao and Jennifer Corbett deserve a lot of credit because they've done
shouts out to them. I didn't know that. So yeah, shouts out to them for sure.
And I want to shout out to one of our coworkers, a friend of the show, Aubrey, who used to do some writing over for Streamer, but I know she was actually appeared in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series as an extra. She's done all kinds of really, really cool stuff, but she was the one who told us that a while back that I think it was before the Bad Batch even started, that those two, Brad Rao and Jennifer Corbett, because TJ said something like that about the same thing, about wanting to give Filoni credit, and she was like, trust me, like, and you're not wrong to give Filoni credit, but she was like, those two absolutely deserve some credit too, because they're doing, it's like a lot of their work on the day-to-day, like Filoni may be overseeing and kind of the guiding hand, but it's them that's actually down on the ground making it happen. So I just didn't want to let that slide completely.
Definitely don't.
Totally.
Yeah.
Without shouting them out. But I could not agree with you guys more. Everything that you said about Star Wars in particular, it's been so refreshing. Like I miss going to see Star Wars on the big screen just because it's like, that's a spectacle unlike any other, but it's been really like, I've enjoyed for the most part, all the stories that we got. And the only one out of everything that didn't perhaps work as well for me was the Book of Boba Fett. And then I know it can be unpopular, but I had a few qualms with, especially like down the final stretch and the ending of Obi-Wan Kenobi. As great as it was for me to get to see Ewan McGregor back structurally, and then particularly the finale, I have some big issues with. But we are not here to talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I say this could be a long episode, my dude.
Yeah, this is gonna be a long episode if we go down that rabbit hole.
If we were just doing a broad Star Wars episode, we would be here for a long time. So I'm gonna bring us back, and I know I kind of went over a little bit of the beats, but I'll just to kind of roughly refresh everybody that's listening, and then you guys, they pretty much get, for the first time all season, they finally get here, and then the whole base is on high alert. Echo gets in and kind of gets himself a little bit. He takes out that droid and steals his hand and then works his way into the base. For everything that we see in the first 10 to 15 minutes of this episode, like roughly the first half, because this is, I believe, about a 25-minute episode, What did you guys think about? Did the hype of them finally getting there live up? And then does Tantus seem like, I know we've kind of been visiting Tantus on and off all season, but does everything that we've gotten here, like, does it feel like it lives up to the hype of a truly penultimate? Because this is the second to last time we will ever see the Bad Batch in their own series. This is it. They get one more episode after this. So does this have that same weight? Like through the first half of this episode, we'll talk about the second half later, but Rich, I'll start with you. Does this have that same weight? Does this feel like a penultimate to you? Did it live up to the hype?
I mean, I think it mostly does. I mean, I maybe didn't quite have like that super high feeling of like, this is almost the last time, like you said, that we're going to see the Bad Batch. But I think it lived up really well. Like, I mean, we finally get to see the Bad Batch on this planet that's been, teased and looked at all season long. It's supposed to be this like impenetrable fortress of the Star Wars universe, at least in this story. And I mean, typical movie thing, you say something's impenetrable and then, they go ahead and get there anyway. It's been in every movie ever, but we still love it. And we still go back to the movies and TV to see it. But yeah, and it was really cool too. Like, I don't know if we've mentioned this yet, but seeing the Bad Batch kind of like split off into their own different teams was really, really cool. You got the Crosshair and Hunter, and obviously Omega's trapped in there, and I love the way, if we're getting ahead a little bit, like I love the way it ended. Like, I mean, just some top-notch stuff from Omega. We'll probably get to that a little bit later. But one thing I want to shout out to before I pass it to TJ, it's really cool seeing Crosshair finally like kind of get back into the good graces of the team, like work himself back, as he obviously pulled some shady shit over the course of both season 1 and season 2. He's never been the most like morally he's kind of been the most morally ambiguous of the group, let's say. But always great. He does the right thing eventually. It takes him a little while to get there. And it's great seeing him, work with the team and show that he can use that attitude and that, ness for good.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Crosshair and Omega thing, because that was actually kind of sneakily one of my favorite moments of the whole episode, was the two of them talking. And he was like, "So you're a good guy." He's pretty much like, "So you're a good guy now, huh?" And he's like, "Look, the Empire betrayed us both." But it seems like Crosshair is the one who's kind of moved on from that much more than like Rampart kind of got kicked out by his own great, like it seems like to me as if he would gladly join the force, like join the fold again if given the chance. But I genuinely feel like Crosshair has kind of moved on from that. And like you said, he has done some really, really heinous, undefendable or indefensible things, but I still love him and I'm still so happy, especially, and they did a really good job with that in the beginning of the season, putting him with an Omega together for the first 3, 4, 5 episodes, because now I'm like watching the two of them bond. I can't help but feel for Crosshair and relate to him. And I love all this stuff too, when he says like, I'm not like being back here is not like really good for anybody. And he kind of sees his hand shaking again. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad to finally, hopefully in the next episode, surely get some resolution for that, because that's been a big overarching thing. But what about you, TJ? I know you said you aren't perhaps caught up on this whole season. So coming in and just watching this as kind of its own standalone episode, what did you think?
I thought it was good, man. I mean, one thing, like you said, I haven't been keeping up with it, so like the nuances of exactly what's going on are kind of lost on me. But coming in as a fresh viewer and like from a fresh perspective, I got to say the pacing of this episode was fantastic. For someone not knowing what the heck is going on, I was like totally invested in what was, the characters. And like I said, just the kind of tension being built throughout the episode, I thought was just A+. And we were talking about this really quickly before we started recording, but I got to say too, again, as a fresh viewer, the animation on this show, oh, my stars and garters, dudes. It is phenomenal. Like, it is so good. I was like blown away with how crisp everything looks. And also too, we were also saying like, I don't know much about animation and like how all that works. So maybe this might sound, kind of stupid for people who do, but like the way they do lighting in the show is just like, oh my gosh, it is so good. So yeah, for all those reasons, I was fully enthralled in this episode, which I think is a sign of a really good episode if they can hook someone who doesn't know what the heck's going on.
That's a great point. Yeah, anybody that can come into the 14th episode in the season having not seen the prior 13 and actually be interested, that is a testament to the quality of the show. But I agree with you, and I know you said we were talking about it a little bit off air. And like I often, for those that listen to the show, they know I'm the criticism guy. I'm usually coming up with all the criticisms, and then TJ's the one batting me down. Not batting me down, just so to speak, to say I didn't really
Go more
it didn't
positive.
bother me as much. Yeah. I'm always the one kind of bringing that alternate perspective. But if there's one thing that's usually never bothered me, it's animation. And I don't know if that's because I feel like generally nowadays most of the animation that we get is really good. But even so, like all the different styles, like we get in What If, like we're getting in X-Men 97, and like we get in this show, which to me are three, like if you put them all side by side,
Totally
they're obviously
different.
very
Oh, yeah.
different. And I'm sure they all have names, like they very specific names. Now I'm not 100% sure what they're all called or how they were going to qualify, but
Right.
that's one thing that I've never had complaints about is the animation, because it just always looks great to me. And I think that's due in large part to the fact that there's so many people working on this, if I had to guess, like on a day-to-day basis for
Oh, yeah.
months, if not years, touching this stuff up and making sure it looks great. So I want to read out, I just had the animation department. There's 95 people in the animation department for the Bad Batch. So I won't read through all that, but just know we shout out every one of them. We love them. They're doing awesome, absolutely awesome work. So
loved all
let's
you guys.
absolutely. Let's dive into the second half of this episode a little bit. I won't go beat for beat as much as I did, but I want to talk about a few of the biggest things that happened, because we finally kind of get what we've been waiting for most of the second half of the season, especially when Echo, I'm going to kind of jump forward and then go back a little bit. When Echo finally gets into the base and then he runs into Dr. Carr. And then it's like Dr. Carr is kind of faced with a choice, and she does what at least I thought, and I think a lot of other people thought she was going to do. She agrees to help them escape. We see that a little bit with her in the last few episodes, where everybody's telling her, like, don't talk to the like she's calling them, but like, don't call them by their names. Don't do this. And she's doing all the things they said not to do. She's kind of forming a relationship with them. She's giving them toys. She's being like an actual caretaker instead of a scientist, is what we're
Treating
seeing
them like
from her.
people,
So,
not things.
Exactly. That's perfectly put there. And that's, it's sad to see these kids be treated like they are by everybody besides her, because they were literally like, they don't even call them children. They're like, don't speak to the specimen. And I'm like, then we spend time with them. I'm like, how can you say that? Especially Eva. I've talked about this like the last few weeks. That little girl, Eva, I would die for her. And I hope this isn't the last we see of her. And I know she's just the most remote side character in already like a side pocket show that we're getting, but that character is so adorable. And if we don't ever get to see her, I'll be disappointed. But we also, speaking of being down in the vault and these kids, Omega finally gets another chance here to show her leadership and her prowess as helping these kids escape. And there's been so much the second half of the season that reminds me about what she learned from the Bad Batch in the first season, especially season 1, but then even a little bit in season 2 of this show, which is like how to be a leader, how to be a soldier, to take on all these different roles at once. So many roles that the Bad Batch all kind of have, like individually. Like Hunter's a great leader, a great tracker, kind of great planner. Wrecker's a great fighter. Crosshair's a great shooter. He's a sniper. And we've seen at various points Omega kind of inherit all of these traits by spending so much time with them. And that's, we obviously don't get to see her wield a weapon in this episode, but I feel like especially here, there's so much Hunter and her sneaking around, like rallying these kids to help her. Like when she says, just cover me if they come back, and they don't even know what it's funny that that's a common term for us, like the whole cover me term. But it's like, if you're a kid, you would probably have no idea. That was such a great thing, because I was like, if I'm a kid, I'd have no idea what that even means. Cover me? I have no idea. What do you even
I'd be asking
about?
the same thing.
Right. And
So
that was all.
Hug them like.
Right. Is this what you want me to do? Like,
That's what you
like,
mean?
physically?
Oh, man.
But, and then the first thing that I want to ask you guys about, though, and I'll kind of want to, and after this, I'll give you the floor to talk about everything in the second half of this episode. But obviously, we covered Echo getting in there and talking to Emery, and then Omega a little bit. But the other big thing that happens is Omega sneaks into the ventilation, and she finds this massive creature. And I believe it was named in the subtitles, like it started with a K. I can't remember now off the top of my head. She doesn't say the name, but it's stuck in water. It's like swimming around in the water, and they're shooting guns and doing all kinds of stuff. It's definitely in some form of containment. It's trapped, but I think that's about all we know about it at this point. But my first thought when I saw that, and I'm interested to see if you guys, felt the same way, is, okay, so this creature is somehow going to help them escape. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, it's also in water. Like, this would be like if you're in jail and you see like a whale So, and I'm like, that whale can't really help me. It's cool, but like, I don't know how this whale would help me escape prison. So I'm interested to hear you guys' thoughts on that. TJ, we'll start with you because I felt like that big creature. I hate that I can't remember the name because I remember just reading it on the subtitles before we started this episode. But it seems like it has to play some kind of part in it. But if this is strictly like a water creature, I don't know how on earth it could actually help them escape.
Well, I'll just say, Adam, there's always a bigger fish, my friend. There's always a bigger fish. But I will say, though, I mean, you're 100% on the money. There's no way that this whale thing is not coming into play. Like, for sure, Star Wars loves their kind of like animal companions and all that stuff. Not saying he's going to like join the crew or anything like that, but, you know, Star Wars has a history of using, you know, creatures and whatnot to get our characters out of some sticky situations. So how they're going to do that, I don't know. But it's for sure going to play a part. And I'll also say, too, again, while I haven't been watching the series, maybe this is some kind of creature we've seen before. But I mean, just thinking off of my Star Wars lore, I mean, we have the whales in what's it called, Ahsoka, that can like travel at freaking light speed. So some of these creatures have like some power, you know what I mean, like abilities and stuff that maybe aren't as apparent of their appearance. So who knows? Maybe this whale or, you know, sea creature has a little bit more up its tentacles than we know.
That's actually a great shout. The I can't even remember what they're called now. The space.
I was going to mention the Purrgil. The Purrgil.
Purrgil. That's right. Great.
Yeah. I was going to mention it if you didn't actually.
Boom! Killed it, Red.
Yeah, that's a great shout, and you know, we have so often seen, whether it's Rey in the Rise of Skywalker, a movie that, Rich, I agree with you, does not work for a lot of reasons, but we do get to see her bond with that worm and use her force healing to heal that worm, and then we get to see Ezra and Rebels bond with the wolves and all these things. We've gotten to see force users in particular bond with animals so many times, and we know based on the episode earlier in the season where we got to see oh my gosh, why am I blanking on her name? The Jedi that we got to see, who turned the former Sith Lord, like Count Dooku's apprentice.
Oh yeah. Asajj Ventress.
Asajj Ventress. Yeah, I don't know absolutely why I was blanking on her name right there, but we know that Omega is, however much or however little, they've been very cagey about that, but she's in tune with the Force. She has midichlorians,
Force sensitive at least.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe there will be some kind of moment there. Rich, what do you think about that in particular? But then also just kind of everything else that we talked about, the echo of it all and the Omega of it all in the last half of this episode.
Well, there's been this whole, you know, subplot thing about M count this whole season. I can only assume that's midichlorian count, you know, because they haven't actually out and out said it, but there's no other thing I think that it could be. And I mean, I think we're building up to this whole big reveal. I mean, not necessarily a reveal that, you know, Omega is force sensitive and that she's, you know, at least somewhat in tune with the Force. Whether she's, you know, could be a full Jedi or not is a different story, but, you know, that she's special in that way. And, you know, and I got to shout out to on the Echo front, shout out to 2024 characters named Echo with this and the Echo show from Marvel. They're just killing it this year. But yeah, I mean, this whole episode, I mean, it's funny thinking about it that way. That way, it really did set up actually to be like a penultimate episode for this series, not just this season. And like you said, I am really curious to see what this, you know, big giant, what was like orange red creature does in the ocean. I mean, we'll see if it has any like, you know, light speed travel capabilities or anything like that. But I mean, we saw it with the Purrgil, we saw it with the Rancor at the end of Book of Boba Fett. We've seen it all across Star Wars history with stuff like that. And I think we're in for a pretty big final episode. I can't wait to see what Omega does with it. Obviously, you know, all the Echo stuff was awesome. And I'm just excited to see like the whole team together to find out, you know, what this whole big thing is. Cause like one last thing before I go is that like we were mentioning, this is not a kid show. Like what the stuff that they've been doing to these kids in this laboratory with Hemlock and all it seems like some pretty dark stuff. Like they're trying to, you know, build this Project Necromancer for the Empire and everything. And Omega is not having it, and neither is the Bad Batch. So we're in for a big final run with this team, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing that I want to ask you guys, I'm glad y'all brought up the Omega, Rich, in particular the Omega Force sensitivity, because TJ and I have talked about this at length throughout the course of the show. And this goes back to all the way when we were covering Ahsoka, and I was talking about for how many years in Star Wars have we seen this reveal when we get somebody, they finally learn somebody's force sensitive, and it seems like it's always the same thing, that they pull a lightsaber towards them or they stop a rock from falling on somebody else. When like
Right.
we've seen the force be used in so many great ways to connect with animals, and then like in the Jedi Survivor games, like Cal Kestis using force echoes to touch things, and since like the past, the history with these items and force healing, like all these kinds of really, really cool things. And then even things like Finn and now, granted, they still did him incredibly dirty, but him,
Yeah,
it was more like an intuitive thing. It was less, I'm going to use the force to throw rocks around, and more like tactician wise, like I've got a feeling we need to do this instead of, like, I know everybody thinks we need to go do this, but I've got a feeling telling me that we need to not do that and we need to go do this instead. So that's one thing. The last thing I'll ask you guys, and I'll say, if we get a big force reveal like this for Omega, I personally don't want it to be, oh, the Bad Batch are about to get crushed by a rock and she reaches her arms out and stops it, and then like moves the rock. I'd love for it to be something like we got with Finn, because I was disappointed. Like, to be honest with you guys, I was disappointed in that with Sabine in the end of Ahsoka. Like, I wanted her moment to be something that we haven't seen before. I was 100% fine with Sabine being force sensitive, but when they revealed that to us, I wanted it to be something new, something that we hadn't seen before, because I love Sabine and I think she deserves something a little different than the same thing that we've seen 100 times. So if we're going to get something like that for Omega, would you guys be happy with the pretty standard thing? And if not, what else would you like to see as an alternative for some way to kind of deliver that big revelation to us? Rich, I'll start with you.
I mean, if it happens the way we're expecting it to, that'll be awesome. We've seen it coming all season, and good for Omega and everything. I'm sure it'll be awesome. But I'm not sure what it would be, but I would just love to see something different, because Star Wars, just as a franchise, is so deep with stories and characters, and it's been evolving so much over the last 45 years that anytime you can get something new into the franchise, most of the time it does something good for it. So I will take anything new that I can get, obviously with Omega, and especially because we don't know if and when we're going to see these characters again. I mean, we don't really have much in the works in the animation side, outside of like a couple of minor projects. And we don't really know exactly where we would see Omega and the Bad Batch again, if at all. So if she's going to get something besides that, I hope it's something new, something different. I'll take anything I can get on that front.
What about you, TJ?
Well, first of all, Adam, I just want to say I'm so glad you asked this question, because I was actually going to ask like pretty much the exact same thing to you guys when you started bringing up midichlorians and all that, because this is one of my favorite topics of discussion. But I want to say, first of all, I would really love for, if she is, force sensitive, whatever, I would love for them to show that in, like you were saying, Adam, a more subtle way than like we've seen the Rock thing, right? I feel like that's like kind of almost a meme at this point. It's like, I would like something a little bit more subtle, right? But I do want to say too, I think it would just, like kind of what Rich is saying, I think it would just be super cool to kind of deepen the lore of like what are midichlorians, M count, like, and at least in my mind, just because she's force sensitive, that doesn't mean she's a Jedi or she will be a Jedi, right? And I mean, maybe you guys think differently about this, but in my mind, everybody is force sensitive in a sense, right? Like midichlorians everyone has midichlorians, right? But it just depends on how much you have of it. So people like Anakin Skywalker, he's up to the gills with midichlorians. So obviously he's super powerful, right? But then you have characters like what's her face? The like bug-eyed lady from the newer movies.
Maz, right?
Maz. So it's like she is very force sensitive in the sense of like she can like see things and feel things happen, but she's not gonna jump out with a lightsaber, right? Like there's levels to it. So I think it would be great for her to be, like you said, have a more in tune to the force than your average person. But like you said, like we're not throwing rocks around and stuff like that. So I think, again, it would be a really great move to kind of give us something new and also kind of deepen our, the audience's understanding of how these midichlorians really work. Like I said, just because you have them doesn't mean you're automatically the next Luke Skywalker or Ahsoka or what have you.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I know you started that sentiment with like, you weren't sure if we disagree, but I believe there's actually some project that says that midichlorians are in every ND. It may have even been Obi-Wan.
Yoda, dude. I mean, he says the Force is everywhere. The Force is
Yeah.
what connects
Totally.
every living thing on Earth.
It's always been that way.
From plants, humans, the water, everything. And like Rich said, it's always been that way. In my mind, metachlorian was just to put a word to this kind of
Just put a
thing,
term,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just to and also, again, to kind of give us that gauge. Because, again, everyone is in tune to the Force. If we're in Star Wars right now, we're all in tune to the Force, right? It just depends on if you can use that ability to be in tune to the Force to then manipulate the Force, which is what Jedi do. Exactly, to channel it. That's when you get into the Jedi and like why people refer to it as a religion and all that stuff. But yeah, man, like you said, Yoda laid it out for us easy peasy in the original trilogy, my guys. Go do your homework, people.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's funny because you think about too, there like the varying levels. There's been some people over the course of history that weren't held back by that. We get somebody like Obi-Wan who his midichlorian levels were like way lower in comparison to somebody like Anakin. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But Obi-Wan is like regarded as the hardest working Jedi. Like he studied more than anybody else. He worked harder. He trained more to be in tune and end up becoming a Jedi who, despite having so many less midichlorians in his blood, ended up ultimately defeating Anakin, which was pretty amazing. And I'm glad too that you guys, last thing I'll say before you guys change topics, before I get out of here and you change topics, it reminded me of what one of your coworkers said, Rich. A few weeks ago, we had Klein Felt over from the Direct on the pod. And he said,
love Klein.
Please, Star Wars. Oh, we do too over here. He said, please, Star Wars, stop making this huge galaxy feel so small. Stop doing the same few things in your story. Stop going to the same few planets every time. Let every project feel different. And that's what they've kind of done that to this point with the Bad Batch, where we haven't had, like, we've gotten a few little things like Ventress showing up, but there hasn't been these constant check. It's been largely new characters and then keeping things focused with them, which I've loved. And I hope they see that through to the end, since we've only got one more episode. But I'm amazed that we went 37 minutes on this, because as we talked about before, I was like, I have no idea if we'll go 20 minutes or 40 minutes. And even now it feels like we've only been talking for 5 to 10 minutes because it's so much fun. But like I said, I have to get out of here. I'm getting ready to go see Challengers in exactly 20 minutes from now. But for everybody listening, I'll leave you all in the more than capable hands of Rich and TJ. They're going to take things over from here and talk about X-Men 97. First off, before I leave, I just want to say it was a blast getting this. I hate that I can't keep this conversation. I'm almost wishing I hadn't bumped my showtime up, because I've had so much fun talking for the first 40 minutes, but I'm in it now and I can't refund my ticket. So I'm going to get out of here. You guys have a great rest of the show. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all so much. And y'all have a great day. Great rest of the show.
Thanks, buddy. It's always a pleasure. We'll do it again.
For sure.
Oh, man. All right, everybody. We're off the rails now. It's my show now. TJ's gone. Adam's gone. Let's do it. Rich, my man. So let's get into some X-Men talk. I mean, we could talk for 3 more hours about Star Wars, midichlorians, which I'm about to text TJ after we're done. We need a Star Wars episode, because now my mind's going Star Wars. But let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about this new X-Men episode, X-Men episode 7. And woo golly, what an episode it was. So before we get into some of like the more nitty gritty nerdy stuff, I just want to start this conversation off with, Rich, what were your just kind of overall thoughts of this episode?
I mean, it picked off right where we left off a couple weeks ago. And I mean, like, this whole show, just as a general, has been fan-freaking-tastic. Like, I have loved every single episode of X-Men 97 so far. As somebody who, like, I'll be honest, didn't grow up watching X-Men, the original animated series, because it came out, I think it first came out when I was like a year or 2 old. So I was maybe a little young for that.
What do you mean, Rich? You're not tuning in at 3 months? Come on.
Yeah, right. But I will say I did catch up on most of it before 97 came out. And I'm actually going through it again with my wife for the first time. Because she hasn't seen it either. So we're going through that. We just started it again last night. And just real quickly before I go back to this one, X-Men the animated series starts off hard. Like,
dude, the Night of the Sentinels, bro. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, Professor X making Magneto relive the freaking Holocaust, basically. Like, that's some hardcore shit.
Brutal. Brutal.
Absolutely brutal stuff, and that show's fantastic. But X-Men 97 has just taken it to a whole new level. I mean, a couple weeks ago, episode 5 was like peak X-Men for me, and that's like I can't remember a time I've gotten that like emotionally hit by an episode, and this one was really, really close. I mean, we're gonna get into it really, really quickly here in a few minutes, but real quick before we get there, shout out Lenore Zan as Rogue,
dude.
who has been like the MVP of this season for me. Everybody's been fantastic. I have no complaints about the voice acting, the characters, or anything. But Rogue has been the freaking MVP of this series for me, and it just makes me so mad that they did her so dirty in the live action movies, because I'm starting those as a rewatch too before Deadpool 3 comes out. They need to do Rogue right when they come to the live action MCU, because Lenore Zan is killing it right now with that character.
Dude, yeah, Lenore is fantastic. And like you said, I think this show is, I mean, the original show as well, if you watched it when you were little, it really opened people's eyes to like, oh, Rogue is actually not one to mess with. Like the movies did, like you said, did her so dirty, which this is no, diss to the actress or anything like that.
No, Anna Paquin worked with what she was doing.
She worked with what she had, but it really, I think this episode in particular really opened a lot of people's eyes. Like, oh, they've been sidelining this character for a long time, but no more, people, because Rogue is here and she is gosh dang furious. So let's get into some. First of all, I want to talk about the first scene of this episode, because we start off with a real somber note at Gambit's funeral. And the reason I want to bring this up is because I feel like, at least for me, and I'm sure you are the same way, you're a fan of this kind of stuff, no one's ever really gone. No one's ever really dead, right? And it's like, part of me was expecting, like, next episode's going to start up and, we're going to find out something, whatever. But to open on the funeral, at least for me, just really kind of drove home the impact of what happened on Genosha, and really kind of made us pause for a second on, like, really what happened there. And like, nah, dude, like, Gambit died, which again, it's like, everyone always comes back. But for right now, Gambit is dead, like funeral and all. So, Rich, what were your thoughts on the Gambit funeral?
I mean, emotional as all hell. And like, and even whether Gambit comes back or not, I mean, he was just the face of something so horrible that happened on Genosha. I mean, it was just a full-blown massacre of, like they said, I think it was thousands of mutants died in that attack. And I mean, Gambit was just the face of it, the one that we remember the most. And again, shout out Lenore Zan for, I mean, I Can't Feel You at the very end. I mean, she and Wanda killing with that line in the MCU, just tearing on your freaking heartstrings. But this funeral, I mean, it's set in stone that at least for now, Gambit's gone. And like, that's what the X-Men are thinking. And like, they've known him for a long time. He was an important member of that team. And like, even for all his quirks and all his, abnormalities, he was an incredible fighter, incredible friend, and like, he cared about everybody really, really deeply. And we saw how it affected all of them. And like, I mean, especially on the Rogue front, because she wasn't even there at the funeral. And like, we see in the next scene that, like, I love it too, that this was the scene that they released before the episode dropped. It's like, those little clips that come out beforehand. Rogue was out for blood. And she was like, she wasn't stopping until a whole lot of people paid for their mistakes. And like, seeing her like that was just like, oh shit, we're in trouble now.
Yep, we're in the shits now. And I love you, Rich. You're putting us right into where we need to be, in the perfect segue to Rogue. So like you said, she was not at the funeral, and we see what she was doing, and she's taking on the government head on, trying to find where Trask is, because I mean, obvious person to think who's behind a massive Sentinel attack, right? So a lot of this episode deals with Rogue's journey trying to find where Trask is. And like you said, she has taken no prisoners. She is holding no bars. She easily takes out all these guards. What's it called? And then we also get a little cameo, which I was surprised of Thaddeus, our boy, Big Daddy Thaddeus Ross, aka the Red Hulk. Which, I mean, he's not the Red Hulk in this, but I was still surprised for him to show up, which I thought cannot be a coincidence, given the upcoming Captain America: Brave New World, where Harrison Ford's going to be playing him. So I thought that cameo was super cool. But that leads us to the big cameo of this episode, which where everyone's talking about. the captain himself, Captain America, Steve Rogers, we get in this episode. So Rich, what was before we get to kind of what they're doing, what did you like scream at the screen when that showed up? What were your thoughts when you saw that shield fly in? I know it was kind of spoiled for us a little bit already.
For sure. It was amazing. Like the fact that it took me to the broader picture of like X-Men 97 being a Marvel Studios project. Like I know back in the day, the X-Men, like they had a few characters show up from Marvel. Like I think Captain America showed up there too at one point. I'm not sure if I've gotten to that point in the series yet.
Yeah,
but they had minor like non-mutant characters in that show at different points. But like this time, it just felt so real. Like the Captain America showing up, and shout out Josh Keaton for playing him. Josh Keaton is who plays him in What If. Also, he does a fantastic job with the role. But it just gets me so much more excited for what's coming on the live action front. And don't get me wrong, the animation stuff is amazing. I love this series. This is one of my favorite things to come out of the multiverse saga yet. And I can't wait to see how it ends over the last 3 weeks. But this just gets me so excited to see what Marvel Studios does with the mutants in live action. I mean, it's going to start off, obviously, with Deadpool and Wolverine. And I have nothing but hype for that movie. I am so beyond excited for Deadpool and Wolverine. I can't even express it. But after that, I mean, the mutants are going to be here in the MCU when they're recasting, when we get new versions of these characters. Like I was saying, Rogue needs to be like a top tier mutant in Marvel Studios. And I think they should take notes from this series to see how she's done and what Lenore Zan has done with the character. But seeing Ross in there, like, I mean, seeing Rogue go at General Ross was just something else. And like, I don't know who it is that plays him, but I think it sounded like the same guy who played him in What If too.
What the heck was his name?
If you want to look up the name.
I have it.
Yeah.
Come on, load.
It's all good.
Yeah, whatever. You guys know who we're talking about. You know who we're talking about.
Yeah, or if you want to keep looking. But
I was like, you keep talking, I'll keep looking.
Yeah, for sure. But no, seeing her with Cap, and it's cool too, because like you can see that this is a different version of Cap. This isn't like the Chris Evans MCU Captain America, because he is like still very much like kind of involved with this whole government secrecy thing, with this base that they're at. And it was so funny too, just seeing Rogue just hurl Captain America's shield across the freaking tundra. It was like, I just love he's just standing there like, now what?
Dude, the memes that have been coming out from that have been so good. I've been dying. And
top notch.
Speaking of voice, it is Michael Patrick McGill. That is
Michael Patrick McGill. Okay.
Thaddeus Ross in this episode. But I 100% agree with you, Rich. Not only do I love this cameo, but to me, it really felt like just a little reminder from, Feige and the people at Marvel. Like, don't forget, this is all going to be coming a lot more. And we're going to be getting, like you said, the X-Men are coming and they're going to be interacting with the Avengers, with, your favorite character. They're probably going to be wrapped up in some X-Men stuff soon. So I thought that they played it great and gave us just enough, because I think that you could run the risk easily of it being like, it's just a cameo fest, blah, blah, blah. But I think that they used Cap in the exact right amount to, again, just give us that little, like, the X-Men are part of the wider MCU and the Marvel universe, but not overshadow, like, this is a show about mutants, this is an episode about mutants, so Cap comes, does his little thing, and then that's it. And I thought that was perfect. And one more thing I want to say before we get off Cap is I've seen a lot of people online today kind of like coming at the X-Men people and like saying like, oh, like I hate, so for preface of this, the reason why is because in the episode, Cap doesn't go with Rogue to track down Trask. So he tells her that he's in a facility in Mexico City and she wants him to come with, but he's like, you know what? Like, I'm with you, but it's not a good look if I just roll up in there, wearing the American flag, right?
Exactly.
So, and people have been kind of upset about that. And they're like, oh, Steve Rogers would never do that. Steve Rogers always stands with mutants, blah, blah, blah. And I just want to say really quickly, like, yes, you are correct. Steve Rogers is for sure stands with mutants and is a mutant ally 100%. But where the conversation, in my opinion, gets wrong is that the X-Men writers are trying to use Steve as a plot device to like show like, oh, you know, even Avengers aren't cool with mutants, you know, like I did not get that at all. To me, it was I mean, Cap said it himself in the episode, like his hands are just tied. At the end of the day, Cap does work for the government in some capacity, whether it's SHIELD. So, you know, while he does stand with the mutants, he can't just be going in busting in heads and stuff like, you know, other heroes can do. So I just want to say that really quickly, like in defense of our boy. What did you think, Rich? Did you even did that even enter your brain at all? Yeah.
Not even sort of. And like I was mentioned earlier, we know that this is a different version of Captain America.
Yes.
And like you said, we know that Steve Rogers is gonna stand with mutants. Like he takes care of people who have these special abilities. We've seen it all across the MCU. Yeah. This is just a different Captain America at a different point in his life. You know, maybe we'll see him, you know, have a change by the end of the series. Maybe we'll see him come back for a minute in the episode.
Cool.
Yeah, which would be really cool. And I can't wait to see, like, because I know we're not going to get Steve Rogers Captain America in the MCU with mutants, but Sam Wilson and the mutants is going to be really extra cool. I think especially because like he's got some of that connection with them, because like people that really didn't want him as Captain America. I mean, in real life and in the show. So I think he'll be able to like build a connection and a rapport with them in a way that we haven't seen before. And like I said, too, it's just going to be great finally seeing the X-Men and Avengers characters actually interacting with each other, like on a more regular level, outside of like Deadpool 3 and Secret Wars and everything, which are just going to be, you know, major cameo fest. And I'm all here for it to send off all the old legacy characters.
Yeah,
but
they're just going giving us a taste.
Yeah, going forward, we're going to have a lot more of this. And I'm all here for it.
I'm front row, baby. I cannot wait. Like you said, this is just a little taste of what's to come, people. But moving on a little bit, I want to talk about really quickly to the Genosha cleanup. So like the few scenes that we get with Beast and the reporter lady, and we get the couple scenes with Jubilee and Roberto, all, you know, just kind of doing the cleanup thing, and then they go to Roberto's house. Now, I love this stuff. And I think, again, going back to what kind of my point with the Gambit funeral, I love that the show are taking these opportunities to kind of give us these more quieter moments, but that are super profound to the story and like to what the X-Men mean and their whole kind of message of mutant and human equality and all of that. But I will say, I don't even want to say a criticism, because it's not a criticism, but one of the things I felt with this episode and the Genosha stuff is, while I loved it, and I, again, really felt like it just emphasized all the emotions and stuff we were supposed to feel with the Genosha episode, I did kind of feel like it would have been better served in a different episode than this one. It felt like especially with the
shine.
Yes, I think with the Roberto stuff and with the stuff with Beast, like it was amazing moments, but I wanted to sit there for a minute. Like I wanted to sit in that moment and like really kind of delve into that a little bit more. But then we just kind of flip right back to, you know, what Rogue and Trask are doing. So that's why I say I don't want to say criticism, because the moments are still good. And like I said, obviously we're running into the last 3 episodes here, so it's like we're on a time schedule. We got to fit in things where we can fit them in, and I'm sure we're gonna meet back up with Roberto and Jubilee in next episode. But what did you think, Rich? Am I completely off base with that? Like, what do you think about that kind of stuff?
I don't think so. I mean, I will say this: we got a lot in this episode, because I think the Rogue going after the government thing and everybody against mutants could have been a whole episode in and of itself. Like
that's what I mean. It kind of felt like. Sorry, I didn't mean
to made it a little shorter. No. Yeah. And then obviously the Roberto and Jubilee and Beast stuff. I loved seeing like that side of Beast too, because you really you don't see him really often like really actually kind of let this stuff get to him, because he is always like the voice of optimism and the wisdom of the group, but he really was hurt deep inside by everything that was going on. And I'm not surprised, but it's just something you don't see from him very often. And I love that we got that side of him. And even with the reporter that he's been talking with, I mean, I don't even mind that he was that short with her, because she's like you see what we have to deal with.
Yeah, and that's a great point to your point is, like you said, Beast is usually the kind of voice of I mean, he spends the entire first season of the original series in jail, a jail that he could easily break out of, but he doesn't, just because of what it would make mutants look like. So I love the fact that he did kind of push back on that with her a little bit, because I feel typically Beast would be the one to, like you said, kind of let that go, but not this time. And that again just shows how serious this situation is.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, moving on to the Roberto stuff, like, he has been such a cool addition to this team, and like seeing him work with Jubilee so closely. And I love the fact too that, like, I mean, obviously we expected that his parents might not be like the greatest, reunion to happen, because like even the very first episode of the original X-Men is Jubilee's foster parents, calling the mutant facility to register her and everything, for being a mutant. And seeing it with Roberto's mom, like trying to keep it undercover and like keep it under wraps, and not even really I mean, she knew, but she wasn't really like ready to like fully accept it. Like, it's funny thinking about it. I didn't expect it to be like that, but I'm also not really surprised considering the tone of this show, the tone of its predecessor. I mean, things are really, really serious. And we've even seen like I remember it was funny a while back. It was right when WandaVision came out. At the very end, you saw when Wanda left Westview and like everybody was turning on her. I think that maybe not like specifically in the mutant sense, but that could like set up some really ill feelings like in the live action side of the MCU.
For sure.
This hatred and like distrust of mutants is gonna be there right from the get-go when mutants get there in the real world. And we've seen it all throughout both series, the original animated series and 97. And it's just amazing that it runs this deep and that it still hits that hard.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right on the money, man. The road is very much set in the MCU for that kind of mutant hatred to be there from the general public, because like you hit it perfectly. Wanda in Westview, that's easy thing to be like, well, look at what she did in here, right? And she's one of them. And you could I would also throw in Kamala as well, because we saw her whole thing in New York was very, very public. And the what do they call those people? The DOA or the
Department of Damage Control.
Yeah, Department of Damage Control. They are on her ass, right? So that they could easily spin that to make her look bad, like she was destroying the town, or whatever it may be.
And she's technically the MCU's first mutant.
Exactly. So that's what I mean. So, when the mutants come in, I think that the road is very much set there for there to be that. And I mean, we got to remember too, the general public, at least before Endgame, were not too cool with superheroes to begin with. We had the Sokovia Accords, and like the general reception of superheroes was very, very bad. And that didn't turn around until Endgame, when they saved everybody. Now people like superheroes. Right. But I think it brings up an interesting question, though. For your general public of the MCU, your average citizen, right? You're like, oh, superheroes suck. They saved us. Okay, superheroes are okay now. But then you learn that there are people out there that could be born with powers. Because, I mean, right now it's like Captain America, science experiment. Bruce Banner, science. All of these people got powers from sort of an event. But then you tell your average Joe Schmo, like, hey, man, these people can just be born with like reality warping type powers. That would scare the shit out of people. You know what I mean? And like, they're going to not be too cool with that. So like, I mean, that was a little bit of a tangent on MCU mutant stuff, but yeah, the road, it is set there.
All I'll say to that, if that happened in the real world, as much as I'm sure any of us in this space would like love to get some kind of superpower, obviously, the general public would shit themselves if they knew that there was actually somebody with real superpowers out there. Oh my God.
Like, imagine Wanda, like her powers alone. Like, that is.
Oh my God. People would be scared to leave the front door.
Dude, yeah, I'm scared already. We're just talking about it. But
Totally.
that was a huge tangent there, which I love a good tangent. But for the sake of our viewers and the people watching and listening, let's move on a little bit. I do want to talk about very quickly before we get off Genosha and that stuff. We do get another scene that's pretty important, and I thought was just really cool that they added it. But we get Emma Frost activating her secondary mutation with the diamond skin. And this comes straight from the Grant Morrison run of New X-Men, which this season, at least, I want the original series is a lot of the Claremont stuff, but it seems like this season is very much pulling from the Grant Morrison stuff. So to have Emma Frost unlocking that secondary mutation, I thought was just super cool to see on screen. And I also think it is important, which again, I will keep this short because this could be another huge tangent, but I don't think it's a coincidence that Marvel is introducing the audience to this idea of secondary mutations when we're going to be getting characters like Cassandra Nova in Deadpool and Wolverine. So I feel like it was a perfect opportunity to just kind of get that idea into people's heads of like the X gene can be expanded upon besides just your base power set. So what did you think about the Emma Frost thing?
Totally. And she's like, she could potentially be one of the scariest characters like in all of Marvel. I mean, we saw a little bit of a tease from her in, I think it was X-Men First Class, and like a tiny little bit of at least somebody with a diamond skin in X-Men Origins Wolverine. I don't know if that was Emma Frost specifically. But
I think it was.
Yeah, but she is yet again another terrifying character because she's also got the telekinesis thing. She's almost as powerful as people like Charles, like Cassandra Nova, and stuff like that. So it just sets up some really potentially scary villains. And like you said, they could be around anybody. And the whole Genosha thing, like even somebody like her who was really fighting to just stay alive, and while that second mutation was triggering, I mean, it could spell some scary times over these last 3 episodes.
Yeah, Emma is not one to mess with. Like you said, she's one of the most powerful psychics in the Marvel universe. I would put her right there with Jean and all of them. So, yeah, I mean, great things are going to be coming for her for sure. But we got to go and we got to talk about more Rogue and get to the real Rogue of it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one thing I want to bring up before we get to like the crazy part of this episode is, so she does find Trask and she gets like psychic attacked by, you know, I'm getting mixed up with my words. She starts sucking away his memories, right? Using her powers, and that triggers this kind of psychic attack. We see a little flash of Nimrod in there, but then she wakes up to find Nightcrawler has found her. And then they have a nice, real good, tender moment together. And she turns around and we see the rest of the team like standing behind her. And I just wanted to mention this very quickly because to me, that's X-Men to me. Like that's the X-Men. And like, just, yes, they're a superhero team and yeah, they like fight robots and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they're a family. And like the X-Men is the family that they found together. So I just loved that. I just wanted to mention that really quickly because I just really love that, and really to me represents what the X-Men is.
Yeah. Not really, but not really. The Fast and Furious of the Marvel Universe.
Dude, yes, family, baby. It's all about family.
But yeah, no, for sure. And I love that relationship between Nightcrawler and Rogue. Because like, as somebody who's not as familiar with the comics, I know they have like a pretty long-standing relationship with each other. I mean, especially because they're, you know, their differences are so noticeable. It's like, because Rogue can't touch anybody or she kills them. Nightcrawler looks like Nightcrawler, even though he's like one of the most philosophical, intelligent people in the team. Yeah. And that's a great connection to see. And again, something that really hasn't been explored on the live action side with Tim Cummings or Jim Cummings. What the hell's his name? Something Cummings at the end, and Anna Paquin. Yeah, because their characters, like I just watched X2 recently, and they kind of had a little bit of a thing, but it wasn't really. And yeah, I can't wait to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say like that's like kind of also
Alan Cummings.
There we go, Alan Cummings. But yeah. I would also say that kind of is what differentiates the X-Men from other superhero teams, like the Avengers, where it's like, yeah, they're a family, like you could say, but I mean, they're really coworkers. Like, if we're being real about it, yeah, like they're acquaintances. Like they might go grab a beer, but you know, they're coworkers. Where, like I said, the X-Men are a true family. And speaking of that family gets tested pretty harshly harshly. When we move on to Rogue and the rest of the team, they find Trask and dude, I'm trying to even
This is
set this
not a kid
question up.
show.
Yeah, they find Trask and they start questioning him about Sinister and this whole plan with the Master Mold. He tells them what they know, and that's not good enough for Rogue. And she just lets him fall. I wouldn't necessarily say like throws him. Like she doesn't like chuck him off the building. But
All I can think of is I can think of the Batman Begins line. I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you.
Yeah, literally. Yes, exactly. So she just lets him fall. Wolverine's all for it. He's like, hell yeah, dude, let's go. But the rest of the team is kind of shocked. So before we get to the rest of this kind of fight and the end of this episode, what were your just kind of initial reaction to Rogue just letting this dude fall? Were you expecting that? I know we kind of have been talking about her, taking no prisoners, her really showing her power this whole episode, but that still took me by surprise.
It's really funny. Like, I'm not shocked that she did it, I think, but I am too. Cause like,
yeah,
in these kind of shows, you never expect that the worst thing that could possibly happen, the worst things that these characters could possibly do are actually going to come to fruition. Because like you think, these are superheroes. In the end, like I said with Captain America, they always do the right thing. And you don't see, even for somebody who has been through as much as Rogue has, you don't see her pretty much openly like not let a guy live. And that's what happened with Trask. I mean, I understand it because of what he did, but it's still just like, I respect this show so much for taking that route and giving us something like that's something that we really haven't seen a lot of in superhero projects, especially on the X-Men front. And like, I just give this show so much credit for being brave enough to go down that route and like feel the ramifications from that for Rogue and like for the rest of the team, because that puts them in a really, really difficult spot. Like no matter who saw it or what, and no matter what happened to Trask later, I mean, it's some heavy stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like it's one of those things where it's completely justified, but it's still shocking to see, right? Like It's like you said, it's like I like felt like it was coming, and again, it's totally justified for her to do. But then for it to, like you said, it's like, oh, well, Jean's going to save him at the last second. Or,
Nightcrawler,
they're not going to go there, but they went there. And I think you can kind of say that throughout this whole season is that, and kind of why I love the show is they go there. And like, they're not going to gloss over these kind of moments, which again is what makes the X-Men so compelling and why they've been so popular for the better part of like 60, 80 years, however long they've been around. But then she lets him fall, but that's not the end of it. Like we talked about earlier, man, no one's ever truly gone in comics. And Trask comes back with some Sentinel upgrades, and he proclaims himself as the Prime Sentinel. Now, my people out there with some comic knowledge who have read the books, you're going to know what that means. But Rich, I just want to get your thoughts of not only the Prime Sentinel Trask, but the fight that ensues afterwards. Because I mean, I gotta say that's like we've gotten some really great fights throughout this series, but that might have been one of my favorite. Like with Jean and Scott saving the civilians on the ground, and Morph turned into Quick. I mean, it's just so good. So, Rich, take it away. What were your thoughts of this whole kind of sequence?
Easily a top 2 or 3 fight so far in this whole series. And I gotta say too, like what Adam was saying before, the animation in the series is just incredible. Like the upgrades that they've been able to make, like even for as great as the old series was, the 90s nostalgia of it all, this series just looks incredible. Like with the colors and the action and the effects that they're doing and everything, this fight was something really special. And you could feel just the intensity of it from start to finish. Like, and I mean, this whole Prime Sentinel thing, it really puts them in some serious danger, because like whether he's the main villain or whether it's Mr. Sinister in the end, they got some stuff to set up for future seasons. Like this could go for a really long time in X-Men 97. I mean, I know we've got seasons 2 and 3 coming up. I can't wait to see where this goes from here. I mean, over the last 3 episodes and over the next few years.
Yeah, 100%. And then to kind of encapsulate this whole episode and kind of put a nail in it at the very end, we get a quick little cameo from Cable, who shows up and ends up actually saving the day. And which I'm sure, again, it's kind of a very quick little scene, and I'm sure that we're going to be dealing more with Cable in these last 3 episodes. But the real stinger of the episode that kind of brings everything together is we meet up with Mr. Sinister, but it's revealed that he's actually not pulling the strings of all this. And we get the reveal of Bastion, who is a pretty big bad boy from the X-Men comic book. So, Rich, before we get into kind of some of the nitty-gritty of Bastion and what his whole deal is, what was your thoughts on, again, this kind of reveal of this secret puppet master that's been controlling everything from behind the scenes?
I mean, that is, it's weirdly enough, it's a trope that's been used in movies and TVs a lot. You know, the main villain that you find out is not the main villain and he's working for somebody else, like Loki and Thanos, let's say, in the MCU. But it's one of the ones that I actually really love, because, like, I spent this whole season thought we were going to be fighting Mr. Sinister, and he's been, sporadically here and there. We've seen a little bit of him, but they've actually fought a lot of different bad guys already throughout this whole season. I mean, like some of the Storm stuff and the Wolverine and Jean stuff. It's been a crazy season so far. But I mean, this whole Bastion thing going into the last 3 episodes, he looks like he's going to set up to be a serious foe. I mean, outside of Mr. Sinister, and the X-Men are in for a world of trouble.
Yeah. So for those of you out there who maybe don't know, a little comic knowledge for y'all. So Bastion, he's actually a human Sentinel hybrid. And he's like, I'm besides Nimrod, who is another like future Sentinel, he's almost like the perfect Sentinel, if you would. And basically what happened is the Master Mold bonded with the Nimrod system. And I mean, this is just classic comic shenanigans, right? Like the X-Men push him through some kind of mystical doorway, right? And he comes out as Bastion, who is, again, this human Sentinel hybrid. But actually, when he comes through as Bastion, he doesn't remember who he is. He has no memory of any of this. And it's not until he sees a news story about the mutants on TV that it activates his prime objective to destroy all the mutants, which to do that, he enacts what is called the Operation Zero Tolerance, or OZT, which we also see prominently portrayed in this episode. So I gotta tell you, folks, while we love our mutants and I just want what's best for them and I just want to see them happy, unfortunately, it's going to get a lot worse for them before it gets better. So, Rich, again, with this OZT and the mutants and all that stuff coming, we got 3 episodes left. What do you got? Do you got any kind of crazy theories? Anything, maybe not a theory, but something that you really are hoping to see in these final 3 episodes to wrap us up until the mutants come into the MCU proper, or until X-Men 97 season 2, which we have already been announced that is coming. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it's funny, like, I wouldn't have thought about it like without all this laid out, like without OCT and everything. I'm not sure if everybody's going to make it. Like, I mean, I know, like you said, it's a comic book movie, so everybody can come back, no matter what. I mean, we're literally seeing Wolverine come back in, Deadpool and Wolverine this year, and that's happening. But I think somebody might end up this series not making it in the end. And we still have so much to get to, too, because we still haven't seen Professor X come back. From outer space, right? And we still have to get that whole reunion with the mutants, them finding out that he's alive and everything. We saw Storm react to everything on Genosha in episode 6. That still needs a resolution.
Yeah, she's got to come back to the team.
Yep, with her powers and everything after that Superman flight. I mean, we have so much to get to over this last 3 episode arc. I mean, there's going to be some threads that are going to be hanging by the end of this season going into season 2. I mean, obviously we don't know when season 2 is coming out yet. I know they're still working on it, but I am so pumped to see where they go from here. I mean, these last 3 episodes are going to be nuts.
Oh, dude, absolutely crazy. I think that the cast have recorded their lines for season 2. I think I saw that, yeah. I think I saw that. So while the animation might be done, like, we're on our way, right? Like, I hopefully won't be like years long. I would expect maybe next year or, maybe next summer. But Rich, before we get out of here, man, I got to just say this has been absolutely a pleasure and just so much fun. But is there anything else about X-Men that we maybe forgot to mention, something that you noticed or maybe wanted to point out that we didn't get to?
I think we actually got everything covered. This season has been unbelievably insane. Like I said earlier, some of my favorite Marvel content of the multiverse saga has been in this show. I mean, the first 7 episodes have been almost nothing but bangers. I mean, a couple of low points here and there, but nothing to really write home too much about. And these last 3 episodes, like I said, we're in for a crazy ride. Whatever ends up happening over the next 3 weeks. I mean, I know it's a 3-part finale, which is gonna be painful to wait for every single week.
Yeah.
But I would take that over binging it every single day. I mean, I love the anticipation of it. It's building, and some major shit is coming, and I'm all here for it.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Rich. I couldn't agree more. Everyone watching, listening to this, strap up your seatbelts, everyone, because it is going to get crazy. Like I said, unfortunately for our mutants, it will get worse before it gets better, but we will be right there with them through this journey. Rich, I cannot thank you enough for nerding out with me today, man. It, like I said, been so much fun. I could stay here for 3-4 more hours just talking about X-Men, mutants, Star Wars, all that stuff. But unfortunately, we got to get out of here. If all of you guys at home watch and listen to this enjoyed this, please consider giving us a like. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe, put on that notification bell so you are up to date with everything we got going on over at Agents of Fandom. We got news, we got videos, we got articles, whatever you need in your nerd realm, we have you covered. So please hit that subscribe button. Also, be sure to keep up to date with all of TJ's adventures over at the Calgary Expo. We're going to be having all the coverage for that. And also go check out Rich's stuff. He's got some awesome stuff over at the Direct. And what else can I say? But thank you all for watching. Thank you for bearing with me today. I am Fat Thor, and we will see you guys all next time. Be sure to follow Agents of Fandom on all of our socials, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, anywhere else you get your nerd stuff and your nerd news. Follow Agents of Fandom. Thank you guys all so much.
Thank you, guys.